Hello everyone, welcome to the Scumdog's Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and in today's Cryptid Corner mini episode, I have more supernatural tales to tell today, folks. One article involving skinwalkers, another a flying cryptid. Let's get into the first article titled, Colorado Boarding School Skinwalker Encounter, Strange Noises, Phantom Lights, and a Black Cat in the Desert, and read exactly what people were witnessing. During the 2017 to 2018 school year, a student at a remote boarding school near Durango, Colorado began to experience a steady buildup of disturbing nighttime activity outside his cabin. What began as jokes about skinwalkers turned into repeated encounters involving impacts against the cabin, scratches at the window, distant lights, screams, whistles, and a second deeply unsettling episode during a school hiking trip in Arizona. Let's read the full story now, folks, and hear exactly more about this account. To finish out my last year of high school, I had to attend a high school, located about 10 to 15 miles from the nearest town near Durango, Colorado. During the 2017 to 2018 school year, it was a boarding school, and I lived there with around 30 other students and teachers. When I first arrived, I had never seen or heard the term skinwalker until one of my classmates brought it up. I got curious and looked it up online, and what I found made it sound like some kind of joke, just a magical transforming creature, so people around campus would say, "Watch out for the skinwalkers," and laugh about it. Nobody really took it seriously. The campus itself was large, probably 20 to 30 acres, right next to a river. About 2 weeks after I got there, I was walking the grounds and noticed what I was told was an Indian burial ground, only about 75 feet from my cabin. There were around 20 cabins on the property, and each one only housed 2 people. Okay. I know what you're all thinking here, folks. Maybe this is the work of a hoaxer? Perhaps, but I'm not quite sure that's exactly what happened. Let's leave off on any explanations until after we read through the rest of the article. One night, my roommate and I were up around midnight playing Call of Duty when we suddenly heard something that sounded like a very large animal sprinting full tilt into the back of our cabin. It happened more than once. We were terrified. The school did not allow guns, so all we could do was double lock the door and close the shades. Even the night security guard came by because he thought we were the ones outside making noise. He told us he had been convinced we were roaming around the grounds until he saw how pale and shaken we both were. After that, he at least partly believed something had happened. Then the weird stuff kept coming. About once or twice a week for around 2 months, we heard random scratches on the window, saw clusters of lights out in the field, and listened to screams and whistles in the dark. People in nearby cabins talked about similar experiences. Then one native student told us that speaking about skinwalkers attracts them, and after that, people stopped talking so openly. It got bad enough that I finally asked to meet with the principal and brought it up on behalf of everyone. What he told me made things worse. He said that back in 2010, he had been working late one night when he saw someone sprint into the cafeteria, ripping papers off the walls as it went by. He assumed it was a student and chased it inside. The cafeteria had only one way in and one way out, but when he turned on the lights, there was nobody there. My roommate eventually dropped out halfway through the year because of everything going on, and I could not find anyone else to stay in that cabin with me. I was left there alone, listening to the same kind of activity for months. I got close to dropping out myself, but I was too close to finishing my senior year. Around 3/4 of the way through the year, the school took one of its quarterly trips, during which students went on a week-long hiking excursion somewhere in the country. There were 5 different groups, and mine went to Humphreys Peak in Arizona. We camped out on the way back to Colorado. The first night was fine, and for the first time in weeks, I was not thinking about anything that had been happening at school. The next day, we spent most of our time driving and hiking to the next camp area, a random place deep in the desert, around 5 or 6 miles down a trail. After that, we set up our hammocks and started relaxing. An older woman in a bikini appeared from behind a hill. The sight of her was immediately unsettling. We were miles into the trail, and she had no water bottle, no backpack, nothing. She started talking to one of my teachers and told him she knew the area well and could show him around. They walked off together. What really stayed with me was the way she moved. I still cannot explain it. It looked like both knees were broken, but she was still walking, not limping exactly, but moving in a way that looked terribly wrong. A few minutes later, my teacher came back alone and walked past everyone without saying a word, going straight into his tent. I tried not to think about it much, but I could not get that woman's walk out of my head. On the third day, we reached Tucker Flat, Arizona. After another long drive and hike, we ended up camping on a giant rock in the middle of nowhere. That night, we built a fire, made food, and went to bed. I never really slept. I spent most of the night staring at the top of the tent, still thinking about the woman from the day before. At around 10 or 11 that night, we started hearing noises outside. First, it sounded like rustling, then footsteps, then rustling again. My tent mate and I could still hear it getting closer and closer. I whispered, "You hear that?" and looked over at him. He was staring at me wide-eyed with his knife already in his hand. I grabbed mine too. Then the footsteps stopped. I felt a second of relief and figured it was the best moment to unzip the tent and look outside. When I opened my side, I was face to face with a pair of eyes less than a foot away. It was a black cat in the dead middle of the desert. When my teammate saw it, his jaw dropped. We were miles down a hiking trail, far from anything, and there it was around 11 at night. We could not make sense of it. We decided the safest thing to do was walk all the way back to the trailhead and sleep in the van. So that is what we did. We hiked the entire 5 or 6 miles back in the dark, and the whole time we kept hearing rustling behind us. Whenever we flashed the light, we saw a pair of eyes watching us from a distance. Later, I started reading more about skinwalkers, and a chill went through me when I came across claims that they sometimes take the form of small animals, including dogs or cats, to get close to the people they are targeting. That school is by far the weirdest place I have ever had to live. I thank God all the time that I no longer live there, and this was only one of the experiences I had there. Things got worse as the year went on. From everything I've lived through, my advice is simple. Do not say the word G. Indeed, folks. What is this? Is it possible that skinwalkers are indeed real, and if you talk about them, you draw their attention? That is terrifying, folks. And was G the target of a skinwalker, folks? To me, it doesn't sound like that exactly. G was only one of several victims that apparently was drawing the attention of some sort of entity. Perhaps it was a skinwalker, but the whole school seemed to basically be haunted. But then again, it also seemed to basically follow him and the other school children to this excursion. So it seemed to basically be following all of them, folks. But I can't say for sure. Maybe it was targeting individuals, like the article that G read about skinwalkers, how they take the forms of small animals like dogs or cats to get close to their targets. Or maybe this has nothing to do with skinwalkers. Perhaps the school itself is haunted, and for whatever reason, when they went on an excursion, they drew the attention of another entity that was maybe drawn to the fact that they were somehow, resonating on a level that it could interact with. Maybe that was what this one was, as well as this cat. Or maybe, indeed, it's something else we don't understand. Either way, a terrifying account, I would have to say, folks. But now, let's move on to the next article, titled, Crown Point, Indiana Witness Hears Deafening Wing Beats, Observes Huge White Flying Creature. That could be another account of a pterodactyl somehow basically being seen in the modern age, folks. Let's read on. On the night of September 17th, 2022, a woman in Crown Point, Indiana, stepped out of her garage after hearing an increasingly violent flapping sound that seemed too loud and too heavy to belong to any ordinary bird. What she caught for only a second was enough to unsettle her, because the object above her neighbor's garage appeared enormous, white-winged and fast, in a region already tied to multiple winged humanoid and prehistoric bird-style reports. Indeed, folks, could be another account of, a prehistoric pterodactyl sighting, or maybe another type of flying cryptid. Let's read on and find out. I live in northwest Indiana in Crown Point, about 30 to 45 minutes from Chicago. At around 8:30 p.m. on September 17th, 2022, I was standing at the front of my garage talking with my mom and dad and uncle. While we were out there, I kept hearing this flapping noise. At first, I did not think too much about it, but it kept getting louder and faster. My first thought was that it had to be our flag out front, because we have a pretty large one, and that was exactly what it sounded like. Then I realized my mom had already taken the flag down. That is when I stepped out from the garage to see what was making the sound. Across the street, above my neighbor's two-car garage, I caught a glimpse of something that looked about as long as that garage. I only saw it for a split second, but it was moving fast, almost like it did not want to be seen. What really struck me was how loud it was. I lived directly across from a forest, so whatever it was had a place to disappear quickly into, I guess. Very interesting. I told my family what I had seen, and they laughed it off, saying it must have been a pterodactyl, but I know what I saw was very large. The part I saw clearly looked white, or at least the wings did. I have seen owls around here before. This was not an owl. Since then, I've tried researching where I could. I am curious, but I'm also honestly too nervous to go into the woods alone to look around. I am a 27-year-old woman, and this thing shook me up. I've seen strange things in the sky before, including 2 UFO sightings with other sober witnesses, but this was different. This was nothing like anything I'd ever seen. So, we have an account of this woman who's seen UFOs, folks, and she saw this cryptid, which corroborates other stories of people who basically see one phenomenal entity, like a ghost, and then they see something like Bigfoot, or, well, in this case, a pterodactyl. The fact that this took place in, well, Illinois, near Chicago, folks, with all the Chicago Mothman sightings, is not surprising, because people have also seen giant bats and, well, giant owls as well. But let's read on, and then we'll discuss this point a little more. I am sure it was not literally some prehistoric dinosaur, but it felt close to that in sheer size and appearance. I really wish I had stepped out sooner so I could have seen the full flight path past my house. But from the brief look I did get, it looked very much like the pterosaur image on your site. That is what made me... that's what made me and my heart sink and convinced me to write. My parents are planning to install cameras for general safety, and I would be thrilled if something like this were captured on video. I will definitely keep you updated, S. Now, did S see a pterodactyl, or was it perhaps, well, something like a skinwalker, folks? Maybe this explains what people are seeing. Shapeshifters. Maybe it explains all the signs in, well, Illinois about Mothman. Maybe that's what we're actually talking about here, folks. We're talking about not several different entities, but maybe one that can take the form of several different creatures and mythological beings like skinwalkers. At least people think that they're skinwalkers, but really they're just some sort of entity that takes the form, perhaps maybe doesn't actually shapeshift, but makes you think you're seeing something that looks like a coyote or a shapeshifting half-human, half-animal thing, or even something as bizarre as a gray alien. Or maybe indeed these things are real and people see them, folks, because, well, remember, S here says that she saw UFOs with other sober people, and she can't explain that account. But the more bizarre thing that she's seen in her life is this flying cryptid that she saw. Now, as I said, folks, in Chicago, people have also been seeing, well, I guess not just in Chicago, folks, they've seen these giant owls and giant bats too, folks. Flying cryptids that we just don't understand and chalk up to the same phenomena as the Mothman sightings that are taking place in Chicago and around the O'Hare International Airport. So maybe there's something there that people should be aware of. Could it be true that they're all related to skinwalkers or shapeshifter phenomena, folks? Or is it possible that people who generally basically experience one thing will also see other phenomena? Remember, in the last account, the guy says he had this weird phenomena seemingly happen to him, along with the other people at his school. But what if it didn't follow them? What if, when they went on this excursion, it attracted the attention of either another type of entity, or maybe a skinwalker who maybe had basically found fresh meat, perhaps? That's strange, folks. You'd think that if indeed it was a skinwalker, it had been following them around. It was targeting them, after all. But indeed, folks, if people who see one phenomena like UFOs can also see and will experience ghostly encounters or see Bigfoot or other cryptid entities, then perhaps what happened was that because they were somehow, almost infected with something that basically allowed them to see this entity, entities, folks, this allowed the schoolmaster who was with them, folks, their teacher, to encounter this woman who has basically, our experiences says, had broken knees, and maybe this was something that basically just allowed them to interact with this phenomena, folks. I just can't say for sure. All I can say is that perhaps if you're, infected or somehow influenced by these entities, you are now basically able to see the world of the paranormal more easily, perhaps. Either way, phenomenal. But we're now at the end, so please go subscribe to my YouTube channel, Read Comics They're Bad For You. You can use the YouTube link down below in the descriptions of the chat to go subscribe me. Now, hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure at the part of the bell that'll give you all future notifications. And please, share this video out. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back again tomorrow with another great video, so be sure to come back again then. Until next time, folks, I'll see you all again soon.